Hello, welcome to Brown Dog Gadgets Live. I'm Amanda, the Education Outreach Coordinator here at Brown Dog Gadgets. Behind the camera, I've got Pete. Today we are going to jump into another session of MicroBit University using 4 buttons and 4 LEDs. I know some of you have been waiting a long time for this.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had some issues last week, so we are here this week and ready to go. But before that, if you have not followed us on our social media platforms, please do so. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, and YouTube. Also, the guide to this, as well as all of our projects and products, can be found at browndoggadgets.com. If you have any questions as we're live streaming, whether it's about the code, any comments, anything you want to talk about, please feel free to chat it up with us. We would love to talk with you. Otherwise, if you have questions afterwards, you can always email us at help@browndoggadgets.com. Awesome. We're going to jump into this one because it's a good one.
Oh.
It's a fun one. Let's switch to the overhead cam right away.
Okay.
So,
let's do it.
Well, first off, here's the 3D printed large microbit because, it's fun. If you have been joining us for our other MicroBit University sessions, you know that we've been working our way through adding 1 LED, 2 LEDs, 4 LEDs, a single push button with an LED, a couple push buttons with an LED. So we are maxing out the space on this Lego base plate. We have 4 LEDs with 4 push buttons. And the goal for all of this is just to teach you different ways to code all of these different components and really help you teach that coding to students with real, actual things that they can hold in their hand and manipulate.
Yeah.
So we are going to, I am not going to sit here and actually tape all of this up on a new one. You don't need to see me do that. If you are not familiar with using our maker tape on the Lego base plate, we suggest going back to some of the earlier MicroBit University sessions. You can find those either on our website where you actually find MicroBit University. At the bottom of those guides, we have the YouTube link to the video for the live stream for that day. Or you can actually go to our YouTube page, click on the live tab, and you can find all of those old live videos there. Mm-hmm. So Pete has done the hard work here of rigging up 4 LEDs and 4 push buttons. You could do a bigger base plate and spread them out more, but why?
Yeah.
I'm going to add some power to my bit board. And then we're going to start with our first microbit that is coded for 4 patterns, version 1.
Right.
So let's check it out and see what it does. To be fair, I don't actually know. Whoa.
There you go. Look at that.
What happens? Oh, switching it up.
So.
There's so much going on, Pete.
Okay, so here's the trick with this one.
Yes.
Press and hold a button. Okay.
Whoa.
And then go through each button, pressing and holding.
Well, that's way more fun than my version.
Well,
This is definitely the culmination to all the buttons and the LEDs that we've done so far. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, Pete. Show us what we're working on.
Okay, let me try to find that. I have so much going on here. Let's see.
Just like this Lego
one.
base plate.
Oh, hey, there I am.
There.
I got the wall. I'm right next to you.
Yeah.
Mine's not
We're side by
very-
side.
Mine's in focus. Anyway, okay. Yeah, so there's our build. Here's our chapter. 4 patterns, blah, blah, blah. That's all we did. Here is the code. Let me see how much I can bring this over here. Yeah, about like that. Okay, and I can zoom in on this, I guess. Oh. Okay, so once again, we've got our on start. We're going to turn off that LED. We're going to set the pins that have the buttons attached as up or high. So that way when you press that button and it gets pulled to 0 or low, it will activate. We've got our forever loop. And again, for this, we're checking if that pin is pulled low or pulled to 0. So, do you remember what that means, Amanda?
It's pressed.
Pressed and held. So
and
it's
held.
not just pressed and released. Right.
Right.
So again, that code is only going to run when you're holding it down. So it's going to look at pin 5, which has that first button on the left, and it's going to say, hey, as long as that's being held down, that circuit is being completed, run this function. And you can see that function right over here. And we've got our other functions. You can fit them on.
Just keeps going.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Larson scanner. But I mean, I think we've looked at all these before as well. Maybe not with 4 buttons, but with 4 LEDs. So again, we're just turning on and off those LEDs, and we're pausing a certain amount between. I think. Let's see. Yeah. So we've got. That's what's happening there. We're setting a different pause time as a variable at the beginning of each function, and then it gets used elsewhere in that function. So something here to realize is before we would set it here, we'd say like pause time equals whatever on the start. That would be considered, at least in most programming language, a global variable, meaning that variable is global throughout all your code and it always means the same thing. If you change it somewhere else, it's going to change it everywhere. We could think of these as sort of local or localized variables rather than global, because they exist within each function. So here we have pause time and it's 300. It's going to be that 300 throughout this function every time. Over here we're setting it to 150.
Okay.
So here and here it's going to be 150. So we have that one variable, but with the same name, but it can represent a different value depending on the scope of which it exists. So
very cool.
Yeah, so I try not to get too deep into this stuff, and I try to simplify it and explain it in a way that is fairly simple.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so again, with our 4 different buttons, we're just looking for a press, and because it's in this whole if else block, it's only going to do one at a time. It's going to try to do that one, if not that. And we don't have a final else. So I think the final else basically is it's not going to do anything basically, and it will just stop wherever it is. As you can see, you stopped it where to. So as soon as you release it, that function's just going to stop wherever it is, or at the end of the function, I should say. So it's going to complete the loop and end. So like with that one, it's going to leave 4 of them on. This one will leave 2 of them on. So it all depends where you release, where that function ends, or where it ends with whatever function, and whatever is left on or off with the end of the function. So
got it.
That one makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions on any of those?
I don't think so.
That makes sense.
Wait, let me see. Can we see
What do you want to see?
the last 2 real quick?
These 2?
Yeah, I just want to glance through them and see if, yeah, they all make sense.
Good.
Oof.
Yeah, and it should
Speedy.
be when you release it, it's gonna
It finished
complete
the function.
It's gonna complete the function and then end.
Yeah.
So it'll
Awesome.
just like loop that function until you release. Yeah, that makes sense, right?
It sure does.
Cool. And
Awesome.
we'll move on
So,
to the next one.
and then the other one that we had for today was 4 patterns of version 2.
Yes, slightly different.
I'm guessing slightly more advanced as well.
I
Because
would
that's
say-
been typical.
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say so.
And wait, let's see if I remember this. I don't know if I do. 3 and 4 are connected to something, and that's why these 2 light up.
So we do that very first thing we do is the LED enable false.
Right.
So as soon as it gets power, the MicroBit feeds power to those pins because it's part of the LED matrix.
That's right. Okay.
So before
I knew it wasn't the push
yeah,
buttons.
before it even does that first line, it powers up and provides power, and then that first line turns it off, and that's why they go off.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember because the
Yeah.
A is 5 and B is 11, right?
You got it. That's correct.
All right. I'm
And
learning
you should
things,
be able
guys.
to press A as well and take the place of.
Oh, yeah. Take the place of 5.
Yeah, that works.
All right.
All right. Is this the second one?
This is version 2.
Okay. And it probably looks somewhat similar.
So this is not a push and hold.
Yeah. Press that next one.
So it just keeps going forever.
Yeah. So you can see what it's doing is doing it until you do something else, sort of, basically.
Got it.
Right. So again, our build is all the same. We're just looking at slightly different code, which I have over here. So let's, so this one, yeah, sometimes it's funny, like the way it loads in the code. So like, I don't know if I put all the functions on the bottom or it did that, but whatever.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but all the functions for both are the same.
They are.
Okay.
The start has one extra thing, this run value, which we're setting to 0.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do over here is before we were looking for the pin going to 0, and then we were going to run that function. But this time what we're going to do is set that run value to a number, either 4, 3, 2, or 1. So you press the button, it's going to say, hey, set run value to this. Then over here, we've got one more forever loop, and it's going to say, while run value equals whichever one, run that function. So you press that button, it's going to change the value to that. And I think you can press and hold it too for a while, I think, because it's just going to keep setting it to that value.
Right.
As long as you hold it, and it's also then going to check and say, hey, that value is 4, do this. And we're going to do it while. So until that value changes again by pressing a different button, it's just going to keep looping and doing that function. So,
okay. Now, question, could you have set the run values to the actual pins that they were? Like, you could just set run value on pin 5 to 5, right?
I just arbitrarily.
Okay.
I've worked on some kind of more weird advanced things where this is pretty simple. It's like I'm setting it to 4, and over here I'm saying if it's 4, do this.
Yeah.
There's some weird things you can do with math, of course, where you can have things set multiple parameters basically based on math or something.
Yeah, some calculations.
Yeah. So you could say like, if it's button 1, the value is 1. If it's button 2, the value is 2. And you might say, hey, if it's, value 3, and maybe you accumulate those values, or you look for a value based on addition of some values. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. But this is pretty simple, I thought, as far as explaining how that works.
Yeah, I love it.
And other languages have what they call sort of a case statement, basically, where instead of doing this big if-else thing, it'll say like case, and you'll look at a variable and it'll have a number or a value, and then you can have all these different like things that can happen, and it's like a cleaner way of having like 20 different if-else values, but I didn't see that anywhere in the blocks that Microsoft has for MakeCode, so you can do it. You can do it this way. The great thing about most programming is there's no one way to do it. There's there's different ways to come up with a solution. And honestly, that's kind of what I like about it. It's kind of fun. Like you might not find any other example of how to do it this way using MakeCode. Like I have no idea. I just kind of came up with it based on my experience and other things I've done, and I'm like, okay, this seems easy enough to explain. So I went with it.
Well, and I think I think every single chapter that you've done so far, there's a lot of ways that students can modify things.
Oh, yeah.
And change things around and still understand what's going on, but be able to change the outcome.
Yeah. And that's, I think these examples, these sort of starter pieces of code, I've been, writing code for over 40 years, roughly. I don't know. But I still don't.
About as long as I've been alive. Yep.
I don't sit down, from scratch and just start typing. I have example code I pull from everywhere, either my own or I find an example someone else wrote. The funny thing for me is like, I found an example last week, and I'm like, this might work for what I need. And I start like messing with it. I end up messing with it so much, I just wrote my own version, but using someone else's version was enough for me to figure out like, this works, this doesn't work.
Yep.
And I used some of their code as like, this is how I need to make this work.
As a jumping off point.
Definitely. It's
Yeah.
a starting point. It's just like with, if you're writing, as in writing prose or a novel, whatever, you give your blank page, or, you have a prompt or a writing workshop or whatever to kind of get you going and get you thinking about things. So that's how I like to think of these.
And it's just, it makes it so much more approachable for students to be able to then modify and write their own code in the future.
Yeah, and
with all these steps that you've been taking.
And you can take any of this code and just start messing with it and see what it does,
Yeah.
and then figure out why it's doing that. And the nice thing too with this is like you can always go back to the original code that we have by just clicking on it and loading it in again, and you can start from scratch. And like, oh no, I saved over the old version. Nothing like that here.
Never. Awesome. So much fun. That is all we've got for MicroBit University for Chapter 7. Is this Chapter 7? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Next week, we are going to be doing some May the 4th cards.
Oh, we're
because
doing those.
May the 4th
Excellent.
be with you is coming
That's right.
up quickly, because we are already mid-April.
Yes.
So we've got some May the 4th cards for you, for all you Star Wars lovers. Now, I really wanted to say Star Trek just to mess with everyone. It almost
That's how you
happened.
get comments.
I do know the difference.
That's how you get the comments.
I promise.
People will finally comment.
Yep.
So,
So that will be on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to make an R2-D2 or a BB-8
BB-8.
robot buddy.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Great.
It's twice as good as AA4. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Josh isn't here. That's not terrible jokes.
No. And then Thursday next week, we'll do another session of MicroBit University, and we're going to be focusing on the LED matrix
Yeah.
on the MicroBit. So we're going to be
Yes.
more in this guy as opposed to on the base plate.
Yeah, for next week, we don't actually have any maker tape.
Whoa.
So we're just going to start slow with the matrix, talk about some of the basics and some things that maybe they haven't been told about it yet. So
Oh,
see,
well then.
We'll see.
I'm excited. I haven't seen any of your plans for that yet.
Mike's ready to.
Hey, Mike! I was wondering if you were here.
Yeah, right.
So lots of fun.
Yeah.
I do think that it would be really fun to see what kind of things students could create and come up with this stuff. It's just really making the coding approachable, which I love. Yeah. If you have not followed us on our social media platforms, please do so. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, and YouTube. If you've got any questions after this, you can email us at help@browndoggadgets.com. And all of the guides and all the good stuff that we talk about here can all be found at browndoggadgets.com. Clearly, I went in a different direction for you, Pete, there, huh? Didn't go in my normal,
I just like pressing
normal
buttons. I don't
order.
care. I don't
You
care.
caught on quickly. That's
Oh,
great.
no.
Oh no, that's not true.
It was yesterday. Josh was here.
That was a long one, I heard.
Yeah.
I heard there were some fun jokes.
He just loves
Mike was all in on the jokes too.
Yeah. Train jokes.
I heard.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Good time.
Well, we're going to end our session
Oh,
now.
okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So early.
Have a great one.
All right.
We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.